Welcome to Jefferson Highlights Community Television. I'm Lori Zook. My guest today is Seth Stevens, Director of the Jefferson Township Public Library. And
Hi,
thanks
Lori.
for coming. It's good to have you back.
Good.
Let's talk about some of the summer programs that you have coming up this year. July 9th, you will be at Jefferson Day. Why don't you tell me a bit about that?
Well, we're glad to be back at Jefferson Day. We've been doing Jefferson Day for about 10 years now. This year we're doing something a little bit different. We've actually asked for 2 spaces. The reason we asked for 2 spaces is because we've hired a storyteller for that day. In the morning she'll be there as Mother Goose, and she'll be doing a story hour at our booth and then wandering around telling stories. And then in the afternoon she'll be back at the booth again, except dressed up as Pirate Bob. And she'll be doing a story hour as Pirate Bob and then wandering around again the rest of the day as a wandering storyteller. So we're excited about that. We have a raffle planned. We're not exactly sure what we're going to be giving away yet, but it won't actually be a true raffle. Usually what we do is ask someone to answer some questions about the library, and then they take a chance. We were thinking about a chance for the new Harry Potter book, which is due out in mid-July, but I don't know if we're going to be doing that yet. So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you have a fun day planned. July 11th, which is a Monday, you have something called Mad Science.
Right. Mad Science is a group that we've worked with quite a bit, and it's actually a group of teachers who like to come out and present science programs in an entertaining way to get kids involved in science. We've had them do rockets, we've had them do slime. They did a thing with dry ice the last time that were at the library. This time they're going to be presenting a program on bugs. Our hope is that we're trying to really attract somewhat of an older audience during the summer. During the school year, it's hard really to do programs for older kids because they're in school most of the time, and when they're not out of school, when they're not in school, they usually have projects and things. So summer is a good time for us to really try and focus in on attracting an older audience, and Mad Science is good because they're they're geared towards a little bit of an older audience.
What age level is an older audience?
We're looking from like ages 7 on up to 12, maybe even to 13.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Wednesday, July 13th, Art with Ms. Mary.
This is interesting. Miss Mary is actually a volunteer who lives here in town. And in previous years, we've had actually a comic book artist come in and show the kids how to do comic book characters. And Miss Mary is going to be doing the same thing. There's been a real change in the area of comic books. They're now called graphic novels, and they've been very influenced by artists in Japan, but they're very popular with kids, and they're not comic books like we used to think of them. They're actually whole stories that are told in a novel format, and it works pretty well because one of the things that have studied one of the studies of children and reading have found that because children nowadays are so graphically oriented, that they can make a real connection to stories that have a lot of pictures and graphics in them. So this is part of the reason that we're offering a program like this at the library.
Is it a type of program where they're actually learning how to draw on paper as opposed to computer type generation?
They're learning how to draw on paper, yeah.
Okay. And on Monday, July 18th, there's a production of The Wizard of Oz, and maybe you can tell me a bit about who's doing that.
Youth Stages is a theater company out of Princeton, New Jersey, and they specialize in presenting performances geared specifically towards younger audiences. And what they'll be doing is condensing The Wizard of Oz into about a 45 minutes to an hour presentation. We've worked with them before. They've done different programs. Last spring, they did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They're very exciting because they come in with, when you think of theater, you usually think of people coming in with huge stages and props. And usually these people come and they might have a suitcase full of props, but they don't use any costumes or anything. And usually it's 2 or 3 people, and through improvisation and imagination and use of a very few props, they tell the whole story. And it's a good
thing for them to come and see.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
You know, what's also interesting is that the original Wizard of Oz stories are quite different from the movie version that most people are familiar with. So this will probably be a little bit closer to the traditional stories.
Okay. All right. And then on Thursday, July 21st, you have a drama workshop with the Pushcart Players.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
They are another theater group. We are bringing them back from last year. What they do is they come in with the kids and help them develop their own theater pieces. They teach them how to do some acting and movement, and then the kids, using their imaginations and some help from the teachers, develop a theater piece that they later present to the parents.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Now, I see there are 2 different sessions because you have 2 different age groups that are involved in doing that?
Yep, they like to work with, they don't like to mix up the age groups. So we'll have a group at 5 p.m. for 5 to 8, and then at 6 they'll be doing ages 9 and up.
That sounds like a lot of fun for the kids to get involved in. On Tuesday, July 26th, you have another Mad Science. Slime?
Mad Science is coming back, and they're going to be making slime. My children, we did this 3 years ago, and my children were able to participate, and they loved it. They still have their slime at home on their drawer. What they're actually learning about is chemical reactions and how different chemicals react together, and in the end product they make slime.
Okay, sounds like fun. I'd like to go to that myself. July 29th, a Friday, you have The Emperor's New Clothes, another professional theater performance by another group.
Right, they'll be coming in and they'll be doing a version of the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes.
Okay, and on August 2nd, which is a Tuesday, you have The Sword and the Stone, which is another group.
Yeah, I'm very excited about having the Traveling Lantern Theater Company come back. They're actually based in San Diego, and they travel throughout, they break up into 2 troops and travel throughout the United States. They were here this December, and they did a version of A Christmas Carol at Camp Jefferson here that was very well received. In fact, we had so many people interested in it that we actually had to do it. We booked a second performance of it when they did it in December. So they'll be coming, and they're going to be doing The Sword and the Stone. Again, it's really interesting. It's 2 people, and they come with a minimal amount of props, and they set up a stage area, and they do the performance, and it's really fascinating to watch. People who aren't familiar with The Sword and the Stone, different variations have been told, but basically it's the story of King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone.
Wow, and they do it without a lot of costumes, so you really have to use your imagination. So it sounds like they really get you to focus on the story. Yeah,
and this same group will be coming back to Jefferson again this December for the Christmas in the Village program on December 3rd, and they'll be presenting A Christmas Carol that day in conjunction with all the other events that are being planned for the Christmas in the Village program that Jefferson Arts is working on.
Okay. All right. And then August 4th, which is a Thursday, you have Art with Miss Mary again, but this time it's 3D drawing and sketching techniques. Tell me a bit about that. I draw, but what are 3D drawing?
I have to be honest with you. I'm really indebted that I have a great staff, and I'm not the person who set this up. Our children's librarian set this up, and I'm not exactly sure what exactly it is. So I have to pass on that one.
No problem. August 9th, which is a Tuesday, you have Hilarious Night of Mime with Robert Revest.
Yeah, he is a mime, and I had the opportunity to see him this spring with a program that the New Jersey Library Association did. And he's a mime, but he's not your traditional mime. He doesn't have the traditional mime makeup, which is kind of interesting because he studied with Marceau. He's based in Massachusetts, but he'll be coming to New Jersey for this performance. And he's a mime. He does a great interpretation of a teenage girl. It's really directed towards families. He likes to do libraries. He'll work with you and pick out library stories, and then he'll do mimes of scenes from the stories in the library. So we're very excited about having him, and our hope with all of these programs is that, one, that they'll encourage people to want to come back and pick up a book to read. That'll help them develop a habit of reading. The second thing is that we hope that people will become familiar with the library, and it'll be a place that they want to come back to, and they'll recognize it as a place. This is where we can go, and we can have fun, and we can do a lot of things here.
It sounds like a lot of fun. On August 17th, which is a Wednesday, Gentle Giants with environmentalist Diana Dove.
Right. This is a program that we've gotten through the Morris County Department of Parks and Recreation. And Diana Dove is a naturalist. Previously, she's brought wolves to the library, and this time she's doing something a little bit different. She's presenting a program about sharks, and she's bringing a big inflatable shark, and she's going to use it to teach the kids about sharks. So we're probably going to have the shark outside because he's a pretty big guy, so he'll be outside.
What other exciting events do you have that you know that are coming up?
Well, coming up, we've started a new mother-daughter book program. I know that they're meeting today. I'm not certain when their next meeting will be, but it's really, for example, today when they meet, they'll be talking about Sarah Plain and Tall, which is a very popular children's book. But the idea of it is to get parents and daughters reading together. I'd like to see them do a father-son program at some point, but right now we're starting out with a mother-daughter program, and it's exciting to see that dynamic coming together of parents and children together sharing a book. The other part of our summer reading program is a thing called Reading Counts. And it's a program that you work through at your own pace. And it's actually been developed by the Scholastic Book Company. And what it is that Scholastic has developed quizzes that go with a wide variety of its books. Scholastic has published zillions of books. They're the publishers of the Harry Potter books, all sorts of children's books. And what it is you read the books, some of the books Scholastic has selected and created quizzes for. You come into the library and you take the quizzes, and for each quiz that you pass, you get a certain number of points. And then you start out by setting a goal for yourself. Say, for example, I'm going to read books into the equivalent of 30 points this summer. So you take your quizzes, and when you get 15 points, you get McDonald's has donated certificates where you can get a free Happy Meal once you get to your halfway point. And then once you've reached your full point at the end of the summer, you get 2 tickets to the movies from the library. Yeah, it's a really exciting program. When we first started out, kids were setting goals of like 30 points, 50 points, and last year some of the kids were setting points of like 175, 200 points.
Wow.
And the program has grown quite a bit. When we started out doing it about 4 years ago, we had 100 kids that started out doing it, and then we went to 150 last year, and actually 150, and then last year we were at about 200 students. So in about 2 years' time, we had increased the number of students who had been participating in it.
That's tremendous. It sounds like a good incentive to get kids reading.
Yeah. What I like about it is that the kids set their own goals, and they decide what they want to read. There's a wide selection of things that they can read, and there's no pressure like you have when you're in a school environment to have to do a book report on it or something. It works well across ages too, because even kids who can't are be able to do that with their parents. Pre-readers can come in and set a goal for themselves, and then mom or dad and the child can read the book together, and then they can sit down and take the test together and do that. And it's really great. We've seen parents and children do it that way together too. We think one of the best ways to help your children learn to read is to read with them.
Now, thank you. And earlier you mentioned that you have a children's librarian, which I wasn't aware of. Can you tell me who that is and
her name is Chris Kabshura. Most of the kids probably know her as Miss Chris. We do a wide variety of story hours throughout the year. We usually run 5 cycles in a year. In each cycle, we usually do 4 story hours a day for 4 story hours a day for 4 days a week, and usually it runs for about six weeks. And they run all the way from infants. We have a program called Lap Sit, designed for children 2 and younger, where a child care person, either their nanny or their mom or dad or both, even grandparents, will come with the child, and they'll do things like read board books. Board books are really great for a pre-reader audience because they're made out of really thick cardboard, and the child can pick them up. They won't be able to tear them. They can chew on them if they need to, but they're really great for that young audience that's really not so much into the listing, but into being able to touch and feel.
Right.
The other part of the program that's really great with Lap Sit is that Miss Chris has developed a number of different hands-on activities. Like, they do a great program with a big parachute, which a lot of the kids really love. And the intention of it is to really give kids their first experience to the library and get them to feel comfortable and to have it be a place that they want to come and spend time. And we think it's really a great way for them to be able to do it. It's nice too because often the parents at that stage need the opportunity to be with other parents. So one of the indirect benefits of the Lap Sit program is that it gives parents, usually who are first-time parents, the opportunity to be together and share some of the things that are common to new parents.
Right. So it sounds like a good experience for all involved.
Yeah.
Who else works in the library? What other people do you have working at the library?
We have a staff of 14 people, and they do a variety of things. We have an interlibrary loan person. One of the things that we do in a year, we get about 1,500 requests for interlibrary loans. An interlibrary loan is a book that we're borrowing from another library. One of the things that is great about being a librarian in Morris County is that all the public libraries in Morris County work very closely together, and there's a constant flux of books going between libraries. So if, for example, someone sees a book that's in East Hanover or at the county library, they can make a request and that book can be sent to Jefferson for them to use, and they can borrow it. Vice versa, any of those libraries can borrow books from Jefferson's collection. So it works really well, and it helps the librarians economize to a certain extent in how we go out about collecting books.
So basically, it's a special order that is returned once the person's done reading it.
And even though most of our books are borrowed from in and around Morris County, it's not limited to Morris County. We also get books from other libraries in the state as well as out of state, and in certain cases we've gotten them from other countries as well.
Wow. Now, are all the books on a computerized system? Is that how you know where a book is?
Yeah, they're on different systems. One of the great things about the internet is that prior to the internet, none of these catalogs were connected to each other. They existed out there, but there was no way to share them with other libraries. With the internet, all of those catalogs can be shared. So from the library, you can sit and look and see what's at the Library of Congress. You can look and see what's at the New Jersey State Library. You can look and see what's at the Austin Public Library. And most libraries honor an interlibrary loan agreement, so you can request books from those libraries through an interlibrary loan request and borrow books from them.
Okay, now how does a library get books to begin with? Do you purchase books, or you're given a budget with which to, and how do you decide what books you're going to get?
It's combination art and science. You take in a number of different factors. Each year, let me start out by saying that each year the trustees sit down. The library has 9 trustees, and usually in the fall we sit down and plot out our budget and decide how much we'll be spending on books. And then we break that down into children's books, young adults, and adult books, and then we also have money for reference books. And what we try and do is figure out and anticipate, well, what kind of books do people want to see in the library? So we look very carefully at book reviews. One of the good big indicators of what kind of books we buy is to look and see what kind of advertising budget that the publishers have for the book. Because generally, if the book is well advertised, people would like to see it in the library. So when we're looking at Publishers Weekly, for example, we look very carefully to see which books are really being touted by the publishers. But we also feel a strong responsibility to make sure that there's a wide variety of material in the library. So you're not only going to get John Grisham and the things on bestseller lists, but you'll also see some lesser and well-known lesser pub authors in the library. Sometimes it's very hard to keep that balance. But there are authors, for example, in Jefferson, certain mystery authors that are very popular here in Jefferson, but aren't that popular outside of Jefferson. So once we buy a book, we are very careful in making sure that we look at how well it circulates. We like to ask people when they borrow a book at the library, well, what do you think of this book? What do you like about it? I hope I'm not going to get in trouble by saying this. Over the years, we've seen not Mary Higgins Clark, but Danielle Steele. She's written a couple of stinkers, and so we haven't been purchasing as many of her books in the past because people just haven't enjoyed some of her more recent books. The most recent Tom Clancy, we purchased quite a few books about that, but a lot of people came in and said, you know, this book wasn't as good as his last couple of books. So we'll be careful when we sit down and look at those books. We try to also be conscious of local authors. There was a book written here in town about Jefferson history, and we tried to make sure we had that book in the library because we knew people would want to come in and look at it. And usually what we'll do is buy 2 or 3 copies of it because people will want to come in and look at it and take it out. But we also know that it'll become part of school projects. The school projects are another big area that we try to look at. One of the obligations that we have as a library is to support the academic endeavors of the community. And we looked at that in a very, very broad sense. So it's not only preschoolers and kids who aren't in school yet, but kids who are in school, as well as college students, as well as people who might be taking a course over computer or people who are going back to school. So we try to anticipate what are the needs for those classes going to be. In the core where we especially look to purchase are in those books in areas where we know students are going to come in with school projects for Jefferson. So we try to work very closely with the school system and make sure they have the kinds of books that they're looking for. For example, right now, I think it's just been completed, I think the 4th grade does a project where each of the students has to do a report on the different counties in New Jersey. And what was really interesting about this is that there aren't many books out there that have been written on the specific counties of New Jersey. So we have a few in the library that we've purchased, but we also had to go out and catalog websites so that when kids said, well, you know, I've got a report on Salem County, and there's really not a lot here in the books that you have, we were able to point them to different websites so that they could get some more information on some of those counties that aren't as well known as other counties.
So you pretty much have to do extensive research from the librarian end in order to provide the right books for the market of people that you have coming in.
Right. We spend a lot of time trying to look at the demographics of the community and trying to understand what that will mean for us in terms of book purchasing. We're trying to really refine this because the library is, right now, the building that we're in was built to hold about 40,000 volumes, and we're at 55,000 volumes. And we anticipate that we're going to be in that building for a number of years to come. So when you're in a big building, you have the opportunity to be able to make some mistakes when you're collecting books. When you're in a smaller building and you know where you're at, you know you're pretty much reached your capacity, you have to really be very careful about what kinds of books you're picking out. We have to pay attention to what time of year it is. For example, we know that during the summer, people don't want to take a big 900-page book with them on vacation. They like paperbacks. So in the summer, we make sure that we have a lot of editions of paperback books that are available for people to take out.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll be back in just a moment on Jefferson Highlights Community Television. Welcome back to Jefferson Highlights Community Television, and I'm here with Seth Stevens, who's the director of the Jefferson Township Public Library. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's continue on a bit about, tell me about books on CD.
Okay. Let me start out by saying that the world of publishing has changed dramatically with the advent of the internet. The publishing process used to be that a writer would take a manuscript and then he would sell it to a publisher, and then a publisher would have to print up a certain number of copies, and then he would sell them. What's changed now is that it's much easier to do your own self-publishing, because with the advent of the internet and computers, that printing requirement has gone. So it's not unusual to find people now putting books on CDs. You don't see it as often in fiction books, but in nonfiction and in the area of technical manuals, you see a lot of publishing on CD, or more commonly, you find them in forms of being ebooks, where you go down and you look onto a site and you read the book on site, or you download the book as a software file and read it off of a computer. In fact, there's been a fictional book on CD written about Jefferson. The book takes place in the time period right before Ringling Manor was built, and it takes two fictional characters who live in the area of Petersburg, which is roughly the area where Ringling Manor is, and it talks about how they cope with the Ringling family coming in and buying up and flooding basically what was Petersburg and building a mansion and an estate there. I wish I remembered the title of the book, but if people want to know about it, they can call me at the library because I have it there. I don't know if there'll be the significant market for fiction and recreational reading that way. I think a lot of people still like the idea of the printed page, but where you could once talk about publishing in terms of books and magazines, now it's become much easier for people to get themselves published, and publishing is available in multiple formats. In the academic world, there are things called electronic journals, which are journal articles that have been written and are stored and distributed through computer networks that will never get to be paper articles. They're intended to be electronic. So it's exciting. I don't know exactly yet how the public library world will be affected by that. One of the ways indirectly that the library is beginning to explore this is in the area of books on tape. One of the things that's immensely popular in Jefferson, and I think it's because there's so many people who have spend time commuting in Jefferson, are books on tape. These are recordings of books on cassette or on CD. The difference between a recorded book on CD and a book on CD, which I was talking about previously, is the first thing that I was talking about was actually literally text on a CD-ROM that you read off of a computer screen. A recorded book on CD is a recording of someone doing a dramatic reading of a book that you would listen to on a CD player in a car or on a computer system or on a stereo system at home. But books on cassette and books on CD, recordings of books, are very popular at the library. Now it's becoming more popular with many book on CD publishers to put a recording of a book on a computer server. So you can actually download the book that you want to listen to into your computer, burn it on a CD. What that does is it means that you don't have to wait for the library to get it. And the library doesn't have to store it somewhere, but you would come to the library, download it through the library onto your own computer, and then you could listen to it. The one company that we're looking at, after you've downloaded the book, it disappears after 3 weeks. So it's like a library book, and that you could renew it, and if you don't renew it, it would disappear off your computer in 3 weeks. How that particular technology works, I'm not certain. But what's interesting to me about it, and why I think people at the library and Jefferson would like about it, is that you can get a recorded book, you can do it from home, you can download the book and use it. And it's a service that we're considering providing through the library yet. We have to do a little more exploration to it. But I think that would be one way to make that service very convenient to people in Jefferson, and provide a great service.
Now, is that a free service, or there is a cost for it?
It would be a free service. I like to say this, all the services that the library provides are free services, with the exception of when you come in and make a copy or you print out something on the computer. The town's library is supported through property taxes. What that means is that when you want to come in and use the library, your service is already paid for. You pay for it through your property taxes.
Okay.
So it's essentially a free service.
Now let me go back a bit to the books on CD.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, kids coming home from school carrying these 40-pound backpacks that I can barely pick up, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that, for example, in New York City, they do have school books on CD if the kids have a computer at home. What do you know about that, and how do you foresee that maybe coming into the future?
I think it's going to be the wave of the future. One of the things that is right now, especially with college students, is that there's a miniature rebellion going on, because college students no longer have the resources to pay $150, $200 for a big, thick textbook, which is the average cost for many college textbooks. For example, if you're a freshman and you're taking an intro to psychology course, you might have to buy a book that's $150, $200, depending on what your instructor is asking for. And that just adds to an already very expensive college education. What publishers are doing is putting the book either in an electronic format that you can either download into a computer or you can put on CD. It makes the book less expensive, and it's actually cheaper for the publisher because they don't have to print a certain number of books and then warehouse them somewhere until they can be sold. They can just store the electronic file on a computer, and then as demand needs, they can print out a copy or print a copy of the book. So I think very much so that you'll see in the next 5 to 10 years textbooks being available either through CD or an electronic format, only because it's more economical and it's more efficient.
Okay, and I think also with books like science books, where science or politics changes so rapidly,
Right, exactly.
that the books tend to be outdated in just a few months, not even within a year or so.
When we were in school, you probably couldn't look at your social studies book and read information about the current presidency. And I anticipate that within the next 5 years, students will be reading about events that happened 6 months ago, 3 months ago, in their textbooks.
What other things do you foresee in the future? What's your future library? What does it look like?
It's very much still book-based. From the studying that we've done and talking to people in the community, people still really enjoy being able to have a book to read. So the library is still very much going to be a book-based institution. The challenge for us will be to figure out new delivery mechanisms for delivering books to people. People live lives that are much busier than they were many years ago, and they keep getting busier. So people don't always have the opportunities to be able to come to the library, sit down and browse through a collection of books and bring it home. There are a number of people who will probably always like to do it that way, but there are a lot of people who expect fast food service from the library. And that's fine. What's important to us is that people are reading and using the material. And if that requires the library to figure out a different way to get the books to people, that's fine. My motto is to get the people the books they want when they want them. And our challenge is to figure out new ways to be able to do that. I admit that, the idea of emailing someone a book feels a little bit awkward to me, but if that's how to get people reading and into books, then that's what we'll do. And I'm sure I can adjust to that idea. But I see the library still as being very much a book-based place. I think it'll still be a place where people can come and find books to read and be able to have a browse a book. One of the mistakes that I'm concerned about, and I think the mistakes some libraries have made, is that they think people come in looking for a specific title in a specific place. What I've observed is exactly the opposite. People often come into the library without a specific book in mind. They might have a general idea of saying, like, I want a mystery or I want a romance, but they don't have a specific author or title in mind. And I think one of the important roles that the library plays and will continue to play is to give people a good idea of what's available out there to read, so that people can come into the library and it can be a place where they can browse through the collection and they can read the book jackets and say, oh, this is a book I might like, this is a book I don't like. It'll be a place where people can develop their tastes for literature, books that they want to read. So I think that will be there. And I think we'll also, one of the things that's interesting with all the changes that are going on in publishing and technology is that it's only now beginning to be retrospective. Things that were written 100, 150 years ago, those are things that will still always probably be available in paper. And I'd like to think that the library is the place that you're going to go to find them. I was a history major in college. 100 years from now, one of the books I spent a lot of time with was the autobiography of Theodore Roosevelt. It's over 100 years old. I don't know that anyone would have an interest in making an electronic book, but I hope that there are people who would still want to read it. And the library is the place that you could go to find that and get it.
Okay, very good. That was a great answer. Okay, let me move on to a different subject. Genealogy. Tell me a bit about how people can trace their family history using the library.
Well, this fits right in with the previous topic that I was talking about. Previously, the way genealogy had been done was going through and searching through a lot of local community data like birth certificates, death records, marriage records, tax rolls. And those things were all available but usually only at the local community or the local places. So if, for example, if you wanted to find out information about your grandparents, you would have to go to where your grandparents lived or where they were born. And you might, unless you had some way to know where they lived or where they were born, you might not even know where to look for that information. With the computer age, all of that type of information has been collected and being made available electronically. So if, for example, you wanted to know, well, did my parents come through Ellis Island? You can go to the genealogy databases that we have at the library, which have the published passenger lists of people who came through Ellis Island, and you can begin to search through those passenger lists using a keyword search or searching by date or by where the person, you think the person might have come, where they might have emigrated from. So you can do that. The other thing, too, that you can do with these genealogy databases is that often a family will publish a family history. And they'll only publish enough to go to the extent of their family, that family. In publishing, I forget the particular term that it's called, but it's when you self-publish and the writer is actually paying to have the books published, and they'll only publish like 50 copies. Okay. And they'll go and give out those 50 to members of their families. A lot of family genealogy is done that way, and the challenge was for anyone doing genealogy prior to the internet was, well, how do I find out about those books, and how do I get a copy of them? One of the things that the internet has enabled us to do is publishers can now put that on a computer server and put it on the internet, so it's out there and everyone can have access to it without actually having the book in their hand. So if someone out in California published a book about a distant relative and there were only 25 copies of that book ever published, you no longer have to have one of those 25 copies. You could go to the server maybe that the author set up and search the electronic copy of that. The other thing that it's been able to do is that are incredibly useful, not useless, useful when you're doing genealogy research is to have access to federal and state and local censuses. Every 10 years by the Constitution, the United States conducts a census, and they're immense. And previously, the way you had to get access to them was through rolls of microfilm. And there are catalogs that are like 4,000 pages thick, where you would look up maybe a person's name, and they would direct you to some obscure roll of microfilm that was stored in the National Archives. And then you had to go through a very sophisticated request to get that roll of microfilm that might be the one you're looking for, but you're not certain. Well, all of those things have been digitized, and what's really neat about them is the actual image of the census register has been digitized. So you're not looking at something that was transcribed, you're actually looking at the handwriting and the data from the original census taker, which can be a little bit hard to read. But what's really interesting is you can come to the Jefferson Library, and you can go back and sit at a computer screen and look at the census for Jefferson in 1870, and you can find out something about relatives, and to confirm if they were your relatives. One of the other things you can find through these databases is military records. Like, for example, I was able to trace back through this and find out that I might have had a relative that served in the New Jersey Regiment during the Civil War, because there are musters for the different troops on these databases. So if you had a relative that did military service, you can go back and look through the military registers and see if that person is related to them, and then you can get more bearings because it'll tell you when they served, where they were serving from, and how long they served. Because sometimes some regiments will keep regimental histories, and you can go there and find out some more about the person. So it's really opened up this whole area of local genealogical research, and it's really no longer local in nature. It's taken local research and made it international so that anyone can get to that information.
It sounds a lot easier. Several years ago, I went through the hard way before the advent of all this newer technology of tracking it down, and it took about a year to do all the work and going down through the city of New York and looking through the microfilms. So your way sounds a lot easier.
Yeah, it's really neat. My father, I remember asking him once, well, Dad, what nationality am I? And he goes, oh, you're Heinz. And I'm like, Heinz? He goes, 57 varieties. So I've been able to go through and begin to sort out what those 57 varieties are using the databases that we have at the library.
Very good. Very good. That would probably help a lot of people. What other special programs do you have that you would like to talk about?
Well, one of the programs that we have for the summer, again, summer is a good time for reading, and we really emphasize summer reading. We've opened up a summer reading club for adults, and we call them Read 'em and Reap. And what it is that we've challenged people to come in and read during the summer, and if you read a book in the summer and you're willing to write a small capsule review, we put it in a fishbowl, and at the end of the summer we're going to have a drawing for 3 free dinners at local restaurants. I think one is for Portofino's, one is for Casabianca, and we haven't gotten the third one yet. But if your review is picked out of the fishbowl, you get a free dinner at one of those restaurants. And it's one of the things that is really an interesting dynamic at the library is that the best recommendation a book can get is one from your neighbor or someone who lives near you or who you know. People, New York Times book reviews are great, but if it's a review from a neighbor or someone you know, it's taken much more seriously.
Exactly. And you offer an online reservation system for books. How does that work?
That's right. There are actually 2 things you can do at the library that are kind of neat online. You can request a library card online, and when you're ready, you just fill out the request form, and then you come into the library, and your library card is ready. And typically, that's the process. If you come in and need a library card, it takes us about 5 minutes to get a library card ready for you. This way you can just do it online, and your trip to the library is that much easier. The other thing that we do have on there is an online request system. The library's catalog is a shared catalog with the 35 other public libraries in New Jersey, in Morris County. You can also get other libraries in New Jersey through that catalog, but it's a little bit harder, and I'm not going to go into that. But the catalog has all the holdings of the 35 public libraries in Morris County. And you can go into that, and with your library card, you can search the catalog. And if you find the book you're looking for, there's a little button right underneath the catalog image that says request this book. And you hit request, and a form comes up, and you enter your library card number, and you say when you'd like the book, and you can have the request notice emailed to you, or we can call you, and when the book comes in, we let you know that the book's there and that you can pick it up.
Okay.
It's really an extension of our interlibrary loan system.
Sounds like a fast way to order a book up, right?
Yeah, and it's really great because that way, especially in a town like Jefferson, where people want to know that if they've requested a book and they're going to come to the library, that it's going to be there. They don't want to have to make a wasted trip to the library. Okay.
And you also have an online survey, correct? Tell me about the purpose of that.
Actually,
and how that works as well.
The online survey just closed up at the end of May. And someone soon will be winning a free dinner to the Milton Inn. That was one of the incentives to get people to participate in the survey. We had about 124 people participate in the survey this year. And what it really measures is library service quality. And it looks at 3 different dimensions of library service quality. It looks at what people's minimum perceptions are of service, what their desired perception of service is, and what level of service they think they're getting. The principle behind the survey instrument is that in terms of service quality, the only thing that really matters is how the customer perceives the quality of the service. I have to go in and look at it and analyze the results, but you know, we've done a pretty good job of meeting the expectations of the community, but we have some areas where we need to improve in. People, according to the survey, really want to have a place that there's a quiet area in the library, a place where people can study. Because of the nature of the library is basically an open building, and there's no floor-to-ceiling partitions in the building. So it's very hard to find a quiet place in the library. One of the challenges that we have to do is sit down and figure out, well, how can we find a quiet place in the library and create quiet places in the library. I look at the survey as being the opportunity for the community to tell us what they think about the library. One of my goals as director has been to create as many ways to hear and to listen to the community as possible. And this has become a really effective way for us to listen to the community and understand how we're doing, but also what their expectations are for the library. Because if we're just a building full of dusty books that no one is using, then we have no purpose or value to the people who pay to have library services.
So you're always looking to improve the library to meet the needs of the people in Jefferson Township.
Not only their needs, I want people to understand that the library is not only a place you can come to when you need a tax form or you need work for a project, but it's a place you can come to where if on a Sunday afternoon you want to listen to a harpist or a band concert, or if you want to come and see a movie, or if you want to discuss a book with someone, the library is the place you can go to. If you want to just be able to pick out a book, you can come to the library and find out. If you want to hear an opposing view to talk radio, you can come to the library and pick up a book and find out whether the people on the radio are accurate or not, and form your own opinions. I think those are the things that the library are about, and it's not only a place where people come because they have a need for a particular piece of information. It's a place where you can come and grow your curiosity and really learn and find things and learn things about yourself and the world around you.
Very good. I also understand you have a wireless hotspot. Tell me what that is.
One of the things that we're finding, and we couldn't do this before because 5 years ago the way most computers connected and talked to each other was by having a hard wire connected to them. So it made it very hard if someone had a laptop to come in and wanted to connect to our internet, connect to our service. Now with wireless technology, people can come in and bring in their own laptop, and if it has a wireless internet adapter on it, they can open up their computer and just connect to the library's services and use the library services on their own computer at the library. It's really a nice tool for people who are doing research, because instead of printing out, for example, a journal article that they may have found through a library database, they can just download it onto their own computer, and rather than having sheafs of paper that they might have to cart around, they can just download it into their own computer and have an electronic copy, and they can do what they want with it when they get home. You know, cut it and paste it into maybe a research paper that they're working on, or do it that way. So it's really a good way for people to take another get information from the library and be able to use it in the way they want. It's that what I said before, getting people what they want when they want it.
That's it. That's great. Tell me where you're located and what hours.
The library is located at 1031 Weldon Road. It's a little bit confusing because if you look at our mailing address, it says Oak Ridge, but we're right across from the municipal building, and if you look at the municipal building's mailing address, it's Lake Hopatcon, which would lead you to believe that if you didn't know any better, the two buildings were in two separate towns, and they're right across from each other. They're within a couple of 100 feet of each other. So we're right across from the municipal building. The library is open from 10 to 9, Monday through Thursday. We're there from 10 to 5 on Friday. We're there from 9 to 3 on Saturday, and from 1 to 5 on Sundays. During the summer, The only time that will be closed is on Sundays during the month of August. We will be the only library in Morris County that is going to be open on Sunday afternoons during the months of June and July. So I'm very proud to say that because we know that people want to be able to come in and use the library on a summer afternoon. The library is also air conditioned, so if it's really unbearable outside, you can come to the library and pick out a book. We've also scheduled a number of programs for Sunday afternoons at the library. So it's, we realize that people's lives are getting busier, so that we have to create more opportunities for them to be able to use the library when they want to use them. It doesn't, to me, make sense to have the library closed on Sunday afternoons when most people, that's when they have the opportunity to use the library.
Right. Well, hopefully you'll get a lot of people after watching today's show.
We're looking forward to it.
How can people reach you? Do you have a phone number they can contact you?
There are a number of different ways. The way that I like most is if you come in and talk to me. I love talking to people, and I'm always at the library, and you don't have to make an appointment to see me. You can just come in and knock on my door. But that's not always the easiest way and most convenient way for people. You can call the library. Our phone number is 973-208-6115, and the staff loves to talk to people, and whatever information you need, just call them up and they can give it to you. You can also go to the library's website, which is jeffersonlibrary.net. Jefferson Library is all one word, and that has all the up-to-date information for the library, as well as email addresses where you can email the library and ask them questions, or you can get a library card or request an online book.
Great. Well, thanks very much for joining me again today, Seth. It was great having you, as always. And for Jefferson Highlights Community Television, I'm Lori Zook. Thanks for watching.